I'll then use a fine brush to strategically dot some more PVA glue around the top side of the elemental so that I can sprinkle even more fine kimchi flocking over the plateau to bring a nice bit of green to the scene. In fact, I thought this looked so good that I continued this greenery down the sides, back, and head of the sculpture to really make it look like it's covered in moss and plant life. At this point, my trees have dried enough to attach them, so I'll use a pen drill to drill some teeny tiny holes into the top side so I can snip the trees off the toothpicks and pop them in place. With that, my earth elemental is looking a little more earthy, but I still need to figure out what's going on with this face. I'm still not convinced, but for now I'll pop the eyeballs out to see if that helps, filling in the blank space with more white followed by the glowing green. I'm going to be filling the little lake on top with resin, but at this scale that resin is going to be too clear, so I'll help to insinuate depth by painting the bottom of the lake with a dark blue. With that though, the painting is finished and it's time to make some water. I wanted to make my elemental into an island of sorts, so I'm going to have it standing in its own little lake, which means I need to make a mold. I considered making a round mold to fit with the basing theme of the other elementals, but making a round mold for resin is a ball ache and a half, and I don't have enough long strips of material that would work, so a square will have to do. Once I've got my mold held together with a little hope and a lot of hot glue, I can start mixing up my resin. I'll mix it into a 1:1 ratio of parts A and B, then add some blue and green dye to tint it kinda watery before pouring it down into the mold. This isn't my normal resin and I don't really trust it, so I'm going to pour it into the mold first and see how it sets before adding the elemental. After a few hours, it's looking like there isn't any catastrophic issues cropping up, so I'll pop the elemental down into the syrupy resin, but before I leave it to set, I'll scoop a little bit into a stir stick, then slop that down into the lake. Then it's just a case of hoping for the best while it cures. And through no fault of my own, it looks like it actually set pretty well. It cured a lot faster than I'm used to, so there's plenty of bubbles trapped, but in the grand scheme of things, that doesn't really matter. With it freed from the frame, I can cut the flashing off, and it's on to adding some waterfalls. While I was scooping the water for the lake, I added a couple long thin strips to some perspex to make these long waterfall-y bits that I can use some UV resin to glue into place. This resin is a lot thinner than the resin for the water that the elemental is standing in, so it's still only partially cured and it's plenty flexible to move and bend into whatever position I need. With the waterfalls in place, I can start adding waves by using a tongue depressor to squish some Woodland Scenics wave goo onto the top of the resin. This stuff is kind of like a less sticky silicone and it works absolute wonders for making waves. I mean, it is called Woodland Scenics Waves, but you know, it's nice to know that it's not false advertising. I'll also add a little bit to the waterfalls so they've got a tiny bit of texture. Then once the wave goo has cured, I can take a mixture of white paint and hole filler, then gently tap that over the top to create some lovely little white watery bits cascading down the fall. A bit more around the base of the waterfall to create the waterfall splash zone, then I can gently tap that white hole filler mixture over the crests of the waves to create lots of little white caps. I think the trick here is moderation, less is more, or you're left with a weirdly blue, snowy landscape. Finally, I'll add some larger splashes around the elemental's legs to create even more scale, and that's kinda it finished. The last thing to do then is finally fix that stupid Joker smile on his face. I'll start by spraying the offending area with a flat gray to cover the green, then I'll mix up a warmer brownish gray to top coat that with. A little black wash will tie it into the surrounding area, and a quick dry brushing should blend it in pretty perfectly. Finally, to cover up any last discoloration and to make sure it matches the rest of the body a bit more, I'll add a bit of flonking around the jawline and down onto the chin, and well, that's us finished here and onto the glamour shots. As always, a big ol' thank you to the fine folk over on Patreon, and a special hey how are ya to the newest of them, Elrod818, I Love Orange Tangs, Cindy Marie Jenkins, Real Estate Agent, Jess Just Jay is Fine, Lizzie Anthony Macniak, Brian Haskins, Koa, Bonesy, Vise Left Bicep, Timothy Bread Lover, Stephanie Beauvais, Rockin' Rose, Frankenstein, Lachlan Carnley, Niles I Guess, Hazy Skies, Cassabin, Happy Birthday Colby Jack Reichs, aka the Hobbit member of the Council of Chaos, and Stink Vessel. You are the tiny toothpick pine trees growing atop this rocky giant of a channel. I think that's probably enough elementals for now, but I had a hell of a good time making them, so let me know if you've got any ideas for future series similar to this. Otherwise, we'll see you next time. Cheers.